say thank you to Birch Living for sponsoring today's video. More on them in a bit. You know, we didn't always live on a homestead in the country. Although I grew up on a 400-acre farm that was owned by my parents and grandparents, the first decade of our marriage was spent on a quarter acre in town. Now, I knew I always wanted to return to that rural kind of environment that I grew up in, but that dream needed many years of saving and searching before it could become a reality. Looking back now, though, I realized that I did not squander those years spent in town and actually started living the country lifestyle that my heart desired from the very beginning of my days as a homemaker. This topic of making the most of your current situation and not waiting for years down the road until you can finally pursue a certain goal or be a part of a particular community, be qualified enough to try something, is a topic that comes up pretty often on the Simple Farmhouse Life podcast. That's my podcast, if you aren't familiar. I've had guests on who had the large family in a tiny home, who started the homestead on 1 acre, who started the business with a newborn baby, against all odds, jumping in and doing the kind of things that didn't fit their current circumstances. When we put a contract on our first home, a 1920s craftsman bungalow, I was pregnant and newly married, and the prospect of managing my very own home was an exciting new challenge that I was ready to take on. I couldn't wait to make it comfortable and pretty on a shoestring budget. It was there that I learned to sew curtains, transform a Craigslist couch into a farmhouse chic couch, fit for a magazine photo shoot. This actually happened. I had a magazine come and do a 3-day shoot for several Better Homes and Gardens publications, and it was funny whenever I thought about the fact that it was a bunch of bleached drop cloth on the furniture in the living room, all less than $100, I think. Well, if you don't count the fabric, probably less than $200 for all of the furniture that was in the living room for that shoot. Basically, all the things that I'm doing now, I did back then on a quarter acre in town. I sourced raw milk and meat from the local farms. We gardened. I learned how to cook different cuts of meat from scratch. The only thing I do now differently, now that we have our dream place, is I milk my own cow. These days, 15 years into our marriage, we have 7 acres, a century-old barn and silo, a flock of chickens, a dairy cow, and the fencing to keep her in, an established sourdough starter bubbling on the counter. It's been there being maintained for almost as long as my second oldest child, so 12 plus years. We've spent the last 4 years adding character and charm to a 150-year-old farmhouse. We are pretty far into this country lifestyle dream, and now it actually looks like what people expect it to look like. My goal in a lot of these videos is to inspire you to, if you also love this simple lifestyle that you're drawn to, if you feel like you need to wait until everything looks exactly like it does for farm influencers online or homesteaders or whatever desire that you might have, I wanted to share some of the things that you can do to live the country lifestyle no matter where you live or what your current situation is, through my favorite way of sharing with you all, and that is just the things that I do regularly here around my home. One of them is learning how to bake bread. There's a million different ways to do this and ways that you can explore and expand your skills, whether it be learning how to make homemade croissants or perfect the scoring on an artisan loaf. I'm making yogurt here. This is something I started long time ago, long before we lived on an actual homestead where we could use our own milk. It's so simple, and I have tutorials over on my blog for how to do that. My kids love to bake on a day where there's not a whole lot going on, making their own pie. I have one child who is very in particular into making pies, and she likes to make them very artistically and try different kinds, from coconut cream pie to chocolate pie, fruit-filled pies. She likes to make the meringue and do a lattice on top or designs on top. There is so many things to learn. I could be a homemaker for the rest of time and never run out of things to learn here in this space. You could just dive deep into one, whether that be baking bread and learning how to use every different kind of flour from rye to spelt to whole grain einkorn, or dive deep into pie making. There are so many beautiful things to explore. Another thing that I've been learning how to do over the last 15 years is to cook from scratch, to the point where you don't really need a recipe to guide you. Now, that won't happen at first, and it takes a lot of trial and error, maybe not adding enough salt sometime or too many eggs, learning how to transform vegetables with salt and thyme through fermentation. This is something that, though we didn't have a massive garden, we had a pretty good garden back on our 1/4 acre. About half the yard was taken up with the garden, and I could source things from farmers markets for what we didn't have, and I still do that today. So now we have a lot more space. I'm going off on a tangent here, and I still have never grown my own cabbage successfully, but I can get it from local farmers. But learning how to ferment those vegetables in your kitchen or can them, preserve them in some way, only requires a little bit of kitchen space. It does not mean that you have to actually live out in the country or own a homestead to accomplish that. An area of from scratch country living that I've decided personally to dive deeper and deeper into over the last several years is learning how to bake every bread product from scratch. Now, sometimes does that mean that we don't pick up something if if we need it? Sure. But this is fun and a hobby for me. This is what keeps me energized and motivated to always be learning new things. Today, I'm trying out sourdough breadsticks. This is something I've been working on. It's a very simple recipe. It's over on the blog, and it pairs very well with soup or pizza. I can add a little bit of garlic butter on top and serve it alongside salads. It's really simple. Once you've mastered sourdough bread, or even if you haven't, it's just like that, except for shaped a little bit differently, topped with butter, baked slightly differently. That's the thing about a lot of these sourdough creations is they're all similar, and so once you learn one, you can quickly move on to another. In our country home, it is important to me to source quality items when it comes to staples in our home that we're going to have for a while. One of those that's very important to me are the mattresses that we sleep on. We spend 1/3 of our lives asleep. Little kids spend even a higher percent. My toddler spends more than half of his life asleep. So it's so important that we have quality organic materials in the space where we spend so much time. So I want to say thank you to today's video sponsor, Birch Living. Birch makes mattresses and sleep products that are stylish, comfortable, and environmentally conscious. Their non-toxic mattresses are made right here in America and are crafted with organic and natural materials that have been sustainably sourced. We own 3 Birch mattresses here throughout our farmhouse, and I love knowing that we're avoiding the harmful off-gassing that can happen in the conventional manufacturing process of mattresses. My mattress is not releasing dangerous emissions into the air, as it is guaranteed free of harmful chemicals. We have 2 of the twin Birch natural mattresses, but then we also have the queen size Luxe. The Birch Luxe mattress is a premium upgrade to their original well-loved natural mattress. It is comprised of 8 different layers of organic cashmere, organic wool, organic cotton, and 100% natural latex. The Luxe model also features an added quilted organic cotton pillow Euro top and natural non-toxic latex that relieves pressure points. I can attest that it is so comfortable. Birch makes it very easy to purchase a mattress online. It comes right to your door and it's really easy to set up. You simply open the box. It doesn't require assembling of several different layers. With your Birch mattress, you get a 100-night sleep trial along with a 25-year warranty so that you can be confident that the mattress will suit your needs for many years to come. They also offer free shipping within the US. If you're looking for a mattress for your little ones, also check out the new Birch Kids line. I love my Birch mattress, and I think you would too. Birch Living is offering Farmhouse on Boone viewers 20% off your first order plus 2 free pillows by using my link birchliving.com/farmhouse. It'll also be in the description box below. I am making a garlic butter to brush the tops of my sourdough breadsticks with, and these will go alongside a soup. In our home, we rely a lot on soup. Now the days are starting to get a lot warmer, and I'm still making soup, but I know that pretty soon I won't be making near as much, which is sad. I love spring, I love summer, but the one thing that I will miss is making soup for every single meal and that being acceptable. Now, I'll still make some soup, but people do get kind of sick of it in my home because we don't keep our home on 69 degrees or whatever. We keep it a lot warmer in the summer, and our kids spend a ton of time outside. And so whenever they come in, it's not all that cool. And a hot pot of soup isn't always what everyone wants. Soup's another thing that I've really learned how to, I don't really want to say master, but become very comfortable with all of the components over the years. So I understand without consulting a recipe when I should create a roux and how to, and what vegetables taste good with others, and which types of soup would really benefit from cream and pepper and garlic powder. This particular soup that I'm making today is a chicken and kale soup. So I'm using chicken breasts from my sister's farm. I'm adding in the basic vegetables that go in just about every soup: carrots, onions, potatoes, garlic. At least for me, those are my soup staples. And then after adding cream and some very thick broth that I've thickened with a roux, I top it with kale. This is a nice spring addition to ease us into winter soups and to spring soups. I can always make people happy with soup in my family if I serve it with some kind of starchy thing, like in this case, breadsticks. I mean, that really wins people over whenever you can dip breadsticks into your soup. So if they're getting sick of soup, serving it alongside some type of delicious bread is always a winner. Again, if you want to check out this particular recipe, you can go to farmhouseonboone.com and then just search kale soup or chicken kale soup. It'll come up over there. I have the exact measurements. While you are learning to cook from scratch, don't let it discourage you. If you do need to read every step of the recipe in order to feel like you've created something that's edible in the end, it won't always be that way as you hone and practice your skills. And still to this day, obviously, there are things I'm constantly learning that I need to study a lot of the technique before I feel comfortable with adapting that. Another example of that would be with sewing. I have loved to expand my skills with sewing. And just the other day, actually yesterday at the time of recording this voiceover, I sewed a curtain panel that intimidated me. I've been sewing curtains in my farmhouse and my last house, which I also called our farmhouse, even though it technically wasn't on a farm. I still called it that. It's actually where I came up with the name Farmhouse on Boone, was because that little house was on Boone Street. I sewed curtains. I've been sewing curtains for about 15 years now, but I wanted to make some very thick, blackout lined, really substantial curtains from expensive fabric. I found this particular curtain online. I got a quote for one panel and it was $1,000. So that wasn't going to work. And I knew I had the skills to sew basically the exact thing, but it stretched me because I wanted to make them really perfect. I didn't want to just throw something together whenever I was going to be using this expensive fabric, lining it with blackout, adding in the pleats. I wanted the measurements to be perfect. I wanted it all to look perfect. And I watched tutorials online, like 4 different tutorials, 2 of them twice through before I even started. So that is all part of the learning process. The same thing happened whenever I first learned sourdough, when I first learned how to make a soup from scratch. So my encouragement in all of this is things that will come easy later will definitely not come easy at first. And I get that question a lot. Well, how do you manage to make bread, to make from scratch food? The way is that, one, I keep the meals really simple most of the time. And also, I don't have to stop and think about the how to. Now I have 7 more curtain panels to make. that will be an easy process because I know exactly what I'm doing. I got through that first one. I now have my head completely wrapped around how I will add the lining, when I will add the pleats, at what stage. It's the same thing with cooking. It becomes really easy to throw together a loaf of bread whenever you've done it so many times. You don't have to look at a recipe. You can just be talking with your kids and working math problems with them, all while throwing together a bread and not having to think, okay, when do I need to do the stretch and fold? When do I need to, start this so that I have bread at this certain time? Or when do I need to start my oven so that my cast iron Dutch oven is fully preheated? All of that mental game goes out of it. And there isn't such an applicable analogy as my curtains right now to relate that. Learning something new, I put that off. I've had the fabric sitting in the kitchen now for weeks because I didn't want to make that first cut into this expensive fabric. And now that I've started and I have my brain wrapped around it through lots of research, I am ready to tackle the other 7. It just took that first one. And sometimes it'll take more than the first one. I already have a basic sewing knowledge, so I just really needed to wrap my brain around which stages of which parts. But we're 15 years into sewing here, and even that very much intimidated me. And I knew that it wasn't going to be that bad. It was just the fear of getting started. Another way to live the country lifestyle is what you source for your home, whether that be quilts that have that country feel or doing a lot of thrifting. I did a lot of thrifting for antique pieces. I did a lot of upcycling and picking things that fit the lifestyle I wanted, even if it wasn't all there yet. It very much felt like it because I could do all of the same things that someone who lived on 100 acres in a 300-year-old farmhouse over in Europe could do, even in the situation I was in. And then I'm hanging quilts out on the line here. That has always felt like the country lifestyle to me. I remember in our old house, it bordered a public park, and Luke put a clothesline out there for me because I wanted to hang my clothes. And I was out there barefoot, kids running around, and people be walking their dogs by because it was a public park with me hanging my quilts on the line, living out my country lifestyle. And I never felt like, this is not what I want. I just want to live somewhere else. Now, towards the end of that, we definitely were looking a lot harder. But I was content to live my simple life where we were. This year, I set up a whole new seed starting system in our basement. In years past, I've used the south-facing picture window in our living room, which is perfect because there's plenty of light, but is not perfect because it's right in the mix of everybody, which means that when I'm not looking, a toddler could grab something or, heaven forbid, knock the table over. It turned into a mess that never really worked out. So we'll see if this works out. I am now a week, maybe like closer to 2 weeks into this. And so we have things sprouting all throughout the shelves. What we did was we already had these shelves in the basement where we kept totes off the ground. Since this is a very temporary situation because this will all be out in the garden in less than a month, I just took those totes and put them somewhere else in the basement and they will go back on there. I might just leave the lights that I purchased in the shelving unit. I'm not sure that I really need to remove them. So they are on timers. They go on for 12 hours and off for 12 hours. The key with seed germination, the biggest pitfall is to keep them really wet. If you allow them to dry out, they won't sprout and germinate. So here's to our 2023 garden. I think every year I think, okay, this is going to be the one where I'm not going to let any weeds happen. I'm going to get out there and make sure that I preserve everything that comes up. Luke's been busy working on compost, and I've decided that the garden space is going to be dedicated to the things I use the most. Some years it's all about variety, some years it's about production, and we are doing that this year. So we're doing tomatoes, onions, peppers, herbs, and flowers. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed this little video from our country life. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you are brand new, please hit that subscribe. I make a new video every week on food from scratch, natural living, and a handmade home. Thank you so much for stopping by our farmhouse.